now that I've showed you how to make the turntable, I'm going to just demonstrate how to incorporate the tie-down into your sculptures, just to show you a basic how to go from, nothing to having a working armature. So why don't we just kind of start off with, oops, there we go. We'll start off with the screw, which is just a machine screw, and there's a 1/4 inch number 20 thread, or like 20 threads an inch on this. Pick that up. This is a 2 inch, which is a little long for this purpose because I would rather have an 1 3/4 so that it's not so long, because if I have that dead on at the end, there's a little too much. So what I'm going to do is just kind of roll this up about a 1/4 inch from the base, stick that in the bottom. So I have about a 1/4 inch sticking out from the top. Now what I can do to save a little bit of time, you can use some Instamorph or anything to create like a more ergonomic end to your tie down. But I'm just going to use some gaffer tape, which I'm just going to roll that around, and that should hold that in place, and now it's a lot easier to actually turn. Anyway, next you need some wire here, which is 18 gauge steel. It's galvanized, so wash your hands if you're going to eat right afterwards. Pretty much wash your hands in general whenever you're done working. The hardest part of this is one, finding the end of the wire, and then two, actually getting this straight. So some people struggle with that, and that's just like generally kind of difficult to get the hang of, immediately. So don't feel bad when you have a bunch of kinks. You'll get better at it. It just comes with time. So anyways, that's about as straight as you need it. And which we'll be using Instamorph. I have a bunch of leftover here. Basically, we're going to heat this up with a heat gun. You can use either a stove with some hot water. You can drop that in there. It will make this malleable. But let's just first go ahead and with some needle nose pliers, or you can use the standard pliers here. You just take the one end and you just give it a good turn, and basically it has to be large enough that it holds in the nut, but small enough that it doesn't fall out. So you kind of walk a fine line here, and just bring that around to a loop. You'll stick that in there, see that it's a little loose, and you can just bring that together minutely. And see, now it's a little too small, which is good. And then you just bring that in there with some pliers, which is sometimes a little difficult. These pliers have a bit of wax on them. So, and as you can see now, it holds it in place. Now that that is correct, I'm just going to pull that straight up, or whatever angle that you want your leg to be at. So you have this little loop here. It's a little loop, nothing fancy, and basically I'm just going to make the legs. And you kind of come over to the other side, and you just pull that out. In which, if you look, when I'm bending this, I'm bending it like really close. So basically I'm using my entire hand, to bend that up. If your hands are really sensitive, especially at first, I would recommend using a couple pairs of pliers. But I've been doing this for so long that I actually gave myself a little split in the thumb recently because I did too much of this. Alright, and then this other foot isn't so important unless you want a second tie down, which 99% of the time I don't use a second tie down. It just kind of overcomplicates things, if you ask me. As long as you have a really good tie down on this side, and like I just do standing sculpture, so if you're doing animation, you're going to want 2 tie downs, of course, and basically it'll duplicate the process of you know, making it the exact same size as that nut there. And take the needle nose again, get this guy back in there. And that just rests nicely. And I take a separate screw, not the one that I'm going to use to go through the piece of wood, which I'm just going to set there right now. Just going to set that, and I'm going to screw this in there. I just leave just a little bit sticking out of the top. I don't want to lose any of the threading, you know, to the plastic. I want to be able to screw into as much of this metal as possible. So, I'm just going to take some of this and heat it up with the heat gun. Alright, and I just kind of wrap it. You want to have a decent amount on the bottom because that's where it's going to be pulling a lot of the weight. So I usually put a little more on the bottom because when I go to flatten it out, it's going to come out the sides, and then I can wrap it up. And so then I unscrew this bolt here, and I just screw it into the base. As you screw it down, it'll thin out, and you don't want to thin it out too much. You want some plastic to be on the underside. And now you can just press that in there. There's always like a little air pocket, and you can get that out the more you work with it. But you don't want to get it so thin, you know, around the metal that you have slippage. And usually while that is cooling, I'll get the next part made up. But let me just show you, while that's cooling, how to wrap the larger bolt. Because when I work with really big projects, it's helpful. Let's see. It's really helpful to work with larger bolts here, which, depending on how clean you are able to drill the hole, there's sometimes a little lip. Yeah, there's just a little lip on here. And let's see here. You can sort of see that lip. I'll take that little burr off just because it's sometimes kind of difficult to get that thread to work better. So now it's a lot more flush. And it's very easy to get that back on. So just put this back in there. Put our tie down on. And that works. So you can just kind of go in now and fine tune the angle of the foot. So like the thing is, now that you have that tie down, you could even put it like up, like as if he's running. Designed for how I make up the rest of the armature. So I usually get about to the knee, a little higher than the knee, because usually I thin out the leg by that point with the clay.